This sermon is all about finding satisfaction. Kind of pictured in this colorful image, people jumping for joy, feeling alive, finding satisfaction. We're all looking for it, right? Maybe this early in the morning we haven't identified it, but I'll help you identify the fact that that's the way God made us. God made us to be satisfied. So we're constantly looking for it, aren't we? Maybe it'll be in the next person we meet or the next promotion or the next place, right? We're all looking for deep down satisfaction. As children, you may remember, or if you're a children or a child just now, you might have thought, or you might still think, that satisfaction is in that next Lay's potato chip, right? Or maybe it's in that next bike that you're going to get. As teenagers, satisfaction was still elusive for us, right? Maybe we thought that satisfaction comes when I get good grades, or I have that cool car. Or maybe we think we'll be satisfied when we are great athletes. If you're like me, when you're in high school, all you thought you needed to be satisfied was a date for homecoming, right? That would do it. That put you over the top. As adults, we're still looking. It's still kind of elusive commodity, this satisfaction. Maybe it's in a bigger house or a better job or a better retirement portfolio. This whole idea of satisfaction, deep down satisfaction, pretty elusive, isn't it? When it comes to satisfaction, so often it seems as though we're like Solomon in today's first lesson in Ecclesiastes 2. It's just like chasing the wind. Always running, never getting. We're in this sermon series, right, on 1 John we're calling Real Faith. It's all about comparing and contrasting the real from the phony, right? The genuine from what is fake. The real deal from what is fraudulent and fabricated. If you were here the last couple of weeks, we looked at real gospel and real confession of sin. That was John chapter 1. But now we're in 1 John chapter 2, and we're looking at real satisfaction. Real satisfaction, not fake satisfaction, not fraudulent, not phony, but real satisfaction. Deep down, joy. That's what John is all about in his second chapter of his first epistle. So brace yourself as we turn to three primary verses. Buckle up, because John is going to hit us between the eyes. John's going to pop our balloon. John is going to crash the party. How does he do it? This is what he says in 1 John 2:15. Do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Get it? John is saying, if you're looking to the world for absolute, ultimate, complete satisfaction, that is a dead end. Oh, wow. Talk about a jolt, right? Now, notice John doesn't say, depart from the world. He doesn't say, don't get engaged in the world. John doesn't say, forget the world. No, John says, do not love the world. Don't look to the world system, for ultimate life, joy, satisfaction. Now, what does John mean by this term world that he uses 3 times? In 1 John 2, verse 15. Let me answer that with a story about a third grader. And his teacher asked him, is the world flat? Well, that was an easy answer, right? The little guy said, no, the world's not flat. Well, then she said, well, then is the world round? He said, no, the world isn't round. You ever been around a third grader like that before? So his teacher said, if the world isn't round, if the world isn't flat, what is the world? You know what he said? The world is crooked. Not bad, right? The world is crooked. That's what John means by his use of world here. It is absolutely crooked. John's not talking about the world in terms of a planet here. He's not talking about the world of people. John's talking about the world in a moral sense. He's talking about the world that is corrupt, in rebellion, broken, sick with sin. John is talking about the world here that is totally at odds with the one who made it. That's the world. It's a sick place. And John says, don't look for satisfaction there. It's just going to be like chasing the wind. Do not love the world. Now, this has brought all kinds of debate, right? What does it mean to love the world? There were two famous Christian pastors in the 19th century. One was named Charles Spurgeon. He preached in London, England. And the other one was an American, Dwight Moody. Maybe you've heard of Moody Bible Institute in Chicago. But these two pastors became friends. And one day, Dwight Moody was with Charles Spurgeon, and he said, Chuck, when are you going to give up smoking cigars? That's loving the world. And Spurgeon replied, Dwight, I'll give up smoking cigars when you lose some weight, because Moody was north of 300 pounds. You see, for Christians a lot of times, loving the world is something you do that I don't like. You with me on this? It's something you do that I don't like, so I say, that's loving the world. But loving the world isn't measured by the teams I root for. It's not measured by the food I like. Loving the world is not measured by how much money I have or what kind of car or truck I drive. No, loving the world is measured, big point here, loving the world is measured by how much I look to it for satisfaction. That's what John means. Loving the world is measured by how much I look to it for deep down meaning, purpose, joy, satisfaction. John goes on in the next verse, 1 John 2:16, very famous verse. We're going to unpack this morning in a little bit more detail, because he's going to show us, and I mean us, all of us are in this together, where we go in the world to find this deep down joy and purpose and satisfaction. So John puts it this way. For everything in the world, remember, world is this crooked world, this sick system, hell-bent against the creator of the world. He says everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life come not from the Father, but from the world. So as I said, we want to break this down, because this gets us every time. It eats our lunch more than perhaps we want to admit. So the lust of the flesh, what's all that about? The lust of the flesh is what feels good. Now, feeling good isn't wrong. Let me just put that out there. Feeling good isn't wrong. God gave us feelings. God gave us desires. That's how we were created. That's how we came out of the factory, right? We have feelings and desires for food and drink and sleep, and some of us actually have desires to exercise. Who knew? But what happens is that these desires become demands. And when desires become demands, they destroy me. That's lust. Desires becoming demands. Not, I want this. Nothing wrong with that. No, I have to have this. That's the lust of the flesh. What feels good. So how does it happen? These legitimate desires. Let's just take eating food. We all like to eat food, right? How does eating food become the lust of the flesh? Well, see, I can eat food to live, or I can live to eat. We all know that, right? I can eat food to get fuel in my body, or I can eat food to cope with stress or escape, or I can eat food because I'm bored with life. It's so easy. These legitimate desires become demands. Demands destroy. You know that. You've seen it in your own life. You've seen it in the news. You've seen it in your own family. We begin to organize our lives around work or exercise or eating or vacation. And then pretty soon, these legitimate desires become the way that we self-medicate to deaden our emotional pain. The lust of the flesh. What feels good can become my God and can become my go-to place for real satisfaction. John has more to say about this. He goes on as we pick apart 1 John 2:16. The lust of the eyes. Lust of the eyes. What looks good. When I was growing up in Colorado, 5th, 6th, 7th grade, we would go frog gigging. Anybody know what frog gigging is? Show of hands out here. Good, 4 people. That means I keep going with the illustration, all right? So frog gigging. You go gigging at night. That's important. And you make a gig by getting a 3-pronged spear and putting it at the end of a broom handle. And you get a flashlight. And you go out, at least we did, to the irrigation ditches at night with our gig and our flashlights. Now, if we would go during the day, those frogs would see us and they would jump into the irrigation ditches lickety-split. But at night, they would look at the flashlights. Oh, wow. How exciting. These frogs would freeze. They'd be mesmerized by the lights. They would stay still as we shine the light on them, and then what happened to that frog? Bam! That's it. And if you're in 6th grade, there's no greater joy than a dead frog. The lust of the eyes, what looks good. There are too many times in my life when I'm just like a frog. I get mesmerized, frozen by the lights. The dazzling lights, the brilliant lights, the exotic lights, the exciting lights. I think if I can just get a $275 pair of Bontrager bike shoes, I will be in the 7th heaven. The lust of the eyes. What looks good. And then I get those bike shoes, and I'm paying them off for 4 years on my credit card. And after 6 months, they're full of mud. Because I was biking with Tommy Mole. Where's Tommy Mole at? Tommy's back. We were biking, and Tommy pushed me into the mud. He really did. I have eyewitnesses. And those $275 Bontrager bike shoes are now completely useless. Bam! I feel like I'm a frog on the end of a stick. Sooner or later, that's what happens. The lust of the eyes. What looks good. Remember when you bought your house? You looked at your house, you thought, wow, I thought we'd never afford a place like this. This is a mansion. This is a castle. But now you look at it and you look at your spouse and you say, either we redecorate or we're moving. This place is a shambles. Or remember when you bought your car, your truck, you drove it off the lot. You felt like you were in the Indy 500. Life was great. Now you look at this late model, it looks like a jalopy, right? Remember when you first met your husband. Oh, we won't go there. Don't worry about it, all right? But you see what happens. We put all our eggs in what looks good. And that becomes my go-to place for satisfaction. The lust of the flesh, what feels good. The lust of the eyes, what looks good. And John goes on, 1 John 2:16. The pride of life, what makes me look good. And we all want to look good. Again, nothing wrong with that. But this becomes ultimate, right? This word John uses, pride, strong word. It's a word that would probably better be translated arrogance. It's a boasting of my abilities and accomplishments. It's vain, bluster, boasting. You know what this looks like. We live in America, right? It's pompous. It's pretending. It's people who posture all the time. It's me exaggerating so I look good. It's me making stuff up that you can't track on Google so you think highly of me. Oh yeah, I was all state in high school. You bet, I was the best salesman last year. Have you heard? My son is at the top of the class. Oh, really? The pride of life. What makes me look good can become my ultimate source of satisfaction. Does any of this stuff work? We go to the next verse. 1 John 2:17. John says, the world and its desires pass away, but the person who does the will of God lives forever. See, what John is saying is finally, there are only two fountains to drink from. One is passing away, one endures forever. One is invisible, one is visible. One could care less about me, one loves me with an everlasting love. And the world, this crooked world, John says, it's passing away. It's the bottom of the ninth inning. It's the 2-minute warning. It's the 17th hole. The bank is going under. The business is bankrupt. The mountains are shaken. The foundation is cracking. Why would I? This is not a rhetorical question. It's me talking to myself. Why would I look for ultimate satisfaction in something that's passing away? Makes no sense. Just ask Mick Jagger of the Rolling Stones. You know this, right? After all these years, Mick Jagger is still singing what? I can't get no what, folks? Satisfaction. Oh, I tried. I tried. It was a dead end. That's not only Mick Jagger. That's St. John. The will of God, the person who does the will of God, that person lives forever. What John is saying is that there's finally only one fountain that quenches our thirst, one fountain that endures forever, one fountain of life that satisfies deep down. And that, of course, we know, thank God, his name is Jesus. You know what John does? This is fascinating. Before he gets in those 3 verses we looked at, he fronts them with 3 more verses. And here they are, at least in outline. 1 John 2:12, you've been forgiven on account of his name. You've known him. You have overcome the evil one. So I want us to just pause here and notice that 6 times in 3 verses, John is using a Greek verbal form. I know this is early, so stick with me on this. A Greek verbal form that means present and ongoing results. That's huge. There are not a lot of these kinds of verbs in the New Testament. Present, ongoing, enduring. Get it? So not only have you been forgiven, you are forgiven completely, washed in the blood of Jesus. And that is present and ongoing. It never passes away. John says you've known him. You've come to know your Savior when he calls you by the gospel. You know him, and you will continue to know him, and you will never, ever, ever stop knowing him. Present, ongoing results. And then I like this one 2 times. You have overcome the evil one. The evil one, Satan, devil, the old evil foe. You've overcome him, and you continue to overcome him. Present and ongoing results. These gifts last forever. Who alone bears all my sin and shame? Jesus. Who alone takes all of my baggage and rebellion to the cross? Jesus. Who alone rose from the dead on the 3rd day and conquered death and the grave? Jesus. Who alone, folks, who alone is worth pursuing all the days of my life? Jesus. Every other road is a dead end. Who says? John says. No one, nobody, nowhere, no place, no how satisfies like Jesus. Let's stand and sing about just that.